So, first up, Phil, thank you very much for joining me this morning. If you would like to give yourself a brief introduction, and we'll go from there.
My name's Phil Payne. I've been a martial artist now for since basically 1990,
Hmm.
when I started in traditional jiu-jitsu. And then traditional jiu-jitsu was very defensive and old school back then. And some would argue, and a lot of clubs, it's still the same as it was 35 years ago, whatever it is now. So I quickly moved across to WT, Olympic Taekwondo.
Hmm.
But I've done different martial arts most of my life. So back in 2000, I went back to traditional jiu-jitsu, got my black belt in about 2005. And then 2008, I decided to go full time with the coaching.
Nice.
Um, at that point, I'd tested it out for a year while in my IT job. Um, See a little bit of a trend of IT people,
Yeah.
ex-IT people being martial artists these days. And it worked out okay. I could scrape a living, so I jumped ship and went professional. And then in 2009, we got our first full-time venue. About 2010, we introduced BJJ, started doing
Mm.
BJJ back then. Um, then in 2005, I got my black belt in traditional jiu-jitsu as well. And then I did about 4 years of Thai boxing as well. We used to have Master Ronnie Green coming over from
Mm.
Manchester,
Nice.
and that was good. Um, and I kept doing the BJJ. And at the same time, when we set up the club, I was looking around for trying to find out how I could improve my coaching
Mm.
specifically. But what I found is there wasn't very much out there at the time. So I ended up going down the route of doing a level two gym instructor, level three PT. And then all of a sudden, I found this foundation degree in coaching and performance management. Um, so I jumped on that for 2 years. And then I ended up doing the top up year at Leeds Beckett. I got the marks that I needed to
Mm.
jump on that. Um, and I ended up getting a first, which was,
Solid.
yeah, but it was surprising. I'd been happy with the 2-2. Um, when I left school with like, I think it was a B in technology and a C in maths and rest with D's and E's.
Mm.
And I had to do an extra year to get on at college to do IT. So it was surprising at that stage. But as it turned out, I'm ADHD and I didn't have the tools
Mm.
necessary early on to study, really. But obviously, after 51 years on this earth, I've discovered little workarounds and stuff like that that work well for me. And that led me then to go on and do a master's. Um, and then one of the lecturers, Andy's, was talking about this professional doctorate. And in the meantime, because they were trying to set it up at the time, I looked at doing a PhD, and it was I think it was Sheffield Hallam
Mm.
at the time. But I've always been a practitioner both. I still train BJJ martial arts these days. I still coach as well. Um, and I'm a practitioner
Mm.
that just happens to do some research. So that led away from the PhD, which is basically doing research with researchers to get a job in research.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do, I didn't, because I want to have some impact if I can. So then I ended up doing this doctorate, which I'm on now, exploring basically the educational wants and needs of children's martial arts coaches in order to retain more of the members.
Brilliant. Nice. And that's is this where like when did the maple stuff start? Is that
That was about
with
2020 that I
okay.
initially started formulating that and putting that together, I
And that's
think.
specifically about coaching kids essentially, right? How to
Coaching
retain them, how to
children.
keep them engaged,
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah,
area.
coaching children. It's people, what you tend to find in martial arts is that people coach how they were coached,
Yeah.
and there's not much input from the outside. So it was a
Mm.
bit of a breath of fresh air to step out of the martial arts environment into the sports coaching
Yeah.
environment. And now we're able to draw on lots of little bits from that
Mm.
and make it relevant to martial arts as well. But people in martial arts tend to think of their martial art as their syllabus a lot of
Yeah.
the time. But if you picture, I've got an actual image. Can I show you an
Yeah.
image?
If you give me, hang on, no, that's the wrong button. I've got to let you share, but yeah, absolutely far away.
Yeah, this one. Du-du-du-du. Ugh, thanks for that. So this is the the sort of coaching model that I
Mm.
adapted from some work that Andy Abrahams had done at
Hmm.
Leeds Beckett. So the what part, what we are coaching, is what tend to be what martial
Yeah.
artists tend to think of as their program, but it's only really a small part of it.
Yeah.
Then you've got who we are coaching, their wants and needs. So not only their motivational wants, but their development needs as well.
Yeah.
They need at different ages, and then how we coach too. And then you've got the whole coaching process in the middle of that, which is the original coaching process was plan, do, review.
Hmm.
I think that's quite insular. So I
Yeah.
wanted the research part in there. And the research is not go off and read PDF academic papers. It's um, share with other people, chat with other peers, share ideas just like we're doing now,
Yeah.
really. Um, and then that can influence your planning, that influences you do your coaching, which then influences your reviewing, and it follows around in a circle. And then you've got the where
Mm.
you're coaching as well, and that's based on the culture of your place, and it's all seen through the lens of you.
Yeah.
And I've taken a bit of a back step really on my view of myself, and all of a sudden I'm thinking my perception, how much of that is being swayed by my ADHD. All of a sudden I'm not thinking that I'm exactly the same as everybody else looking at
Yeah.
problems and issues and stuff. It might be a little bit different for me, but that's the case for everybody because everybody comes with different personal beliefs, experiences, and values.
Mm.
So this is what coaching is to me.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's a very similar process to what we try to use in our gym as well. I do find that with coaches who are like kind of not necessarily passionate about coaching, but want to be a very good coach, they tend to fall into the similar-ish sort of model where it is considering the student, the environment that you're creating, all of those kind of things which have an impact on the lesson overall, right? Rather than just what we're doing on the mat. It's like what happens before it, what happens after it, how are we interacting with these people, the mood of yourself, all of those kind of things make a huge, huge difference. Um, so in terms of I know, I'm just going back just slightly, you implement this with your kids, right? And I know from talking to you in the past, you have a really, really low attrition rate. So somewhere around about 2%, right? Um,
it's about 3%. About
okay.
3% we lose per month.
Which is for like traditional martial arts is very, very low or high,
Yeah,
depending on how you look at it, right? It's a very solid
reasonable.
approach to that. Um, do you, is there anything that you specifically feel within this coaching model that if it's helping with that versus you for other schools where they're taking that more traditional approach?
I feel there's one of the biggest things with the martial arts that, and I'm not saying it's wrong, because I don't, with the information that I tend to share with people, I don't say this is right and this is
Yeah,
wrong. What I try to say is that this action, coaching behavior, might have this side
yeah,
effect, or this planning structure, or no planning structure at all, might have this side effect.
yeah,
And then people make their own choices.
yeah.
But one of the biggest things that we tend to get within martial arts is because it's traditionally been quite militaristic in
Mm,
terms of its delivery and authoritative. You tend to find some of the martial arts leaves very little space for autonomy.
yes,
And if you're not promoting autonomy and you're promoting them following, then it's hard for them to go to the other end and become leaders,
mm.
um, because they're just looking around for the next command.
Yeah. Could you give me an example of how you would kind of potentially structure that within a kids class? How would you create the autonomy within some
So
of
one of the
your
best
classes?
ways that you can do it is by implementing, and this goes for retention in general. One of the best researched theories is something called self-determination theory.
Mhm.
Now I expand on that a little bit, and I've got a little graphic I can show you how I've expanded on that. But I'm into systems. It's
Love graphic. I mean, I love graphics. Mine are
yeah,
normally
yeah.
hand drawn. I like the hand drawn graphics.
It makes it clear in my head,
Yes.
and the chance of me forgetting bits.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the self-determination theory states to have intrinsic motivation, and that's really
Yeah.
we want to focus on.
Yeah.
We want children to be there because they enjoy the activity.
Yeah.
Children don't last long if they don't enjoy it. There's
Mm.
only a certain number of times that the parents are going to drag a screaming kid 20 minutes ride or whatever to an activity and sit there during the activity and take them back.
Yeah.
They're only going to do that so many times if the kid doesn't want to do it before they let them quit.
Yeah, I
Really, so
think
that intrinsic motivation is really important.
yeah, I think one of the things that certainly in jiu-jitsu that tends to happen is people get this idea that if you create this really excellent child athlete, they're going to somehow become this like jiu-jitsu superstar later on. And I know from my own kind of research and my wife's research that just isn't the case for the majority of the kids. They end up burnt out. What's more important is kind of developing like a love of learning, a love of kind of using their bodies, and then having them doing it for a long period of time. Those kind of
100%.
excellent skills will come at a later date. That's something that we really try to embody in our classes as well. Um, I mean, from a more scientific based background rather than my anecdotal experience, do you have anything that people potentially could go look at where they can see this kind of research for
Yeah,
themselves if they
there's
want to check it out?
so much research out there on, and there's a bit of counter research as well now, but
Of course, yeah.
there is certain sports that are classed as early development sports like
Yeah.
gymnastics, dance, swimming, where there's a physiological adaptation that needs to happen,
Yeah.
like in swimming, for them to be good
Yeah.
later on. But other than that, most of the research suggests that early specialization is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Um,
It
now,
can actually have a negative impact on their health later, right? If they overly specialize in terms of like their,
100%,
you know,
yeah, yeah. I mean,
knee.
most the research alongside the physical literacy stuff suggests that when they're training multiple sports,
Mm,
multiple physical activities, they become more robust. And you
yes.
can see the logical reasoning that if you just train the body in one way from a young
Yeah.
age, then it's not necessarily going to build an
Yeah.
all-round athletic child or
Yeah.
the teenager, should we say. So there is a lot of research around um, early development, really,
Yeah.
and how it shouldn't be focused in one area and having a multiple. I think there was an S&C coach who said that for my high level S&C coach that said if you want to build robust kids, get them swimming, doing gymnastics, and martial arts. I
Yeah.
think was the three things that they.
Yeah, those kind of core activities or foundational sports, right, which are really important for kids, right, which is what we're kind of talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
I think for adults, there's an element of that as well, because they end up doing stuff like playing football, and that's one kind of range of movement that they're utilizing. It's not, there's not really much upper body work. There's not much, you're not doing that. You're not using that side of your body. So to have that complete kind of,
development.
yeah, the development side of things is super important. Um,
I do see something specific to BJJ,
mhm.
which is that what tends to happen. I teach traditional jiu-jitsu, but it's not really traditional. We
Yeah,
spar like Thai boxing, we
yeah, yeah,
grapple like BJJ, and we don't throw. I'd like to think that we throw as well as judo guys, but they're on another level.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but what we tend to find is that people start off the grappling bit is the hardest bit to come to terms with
yeah.
because they've not rolled around on the floor managing the body weight since they were kids.
Mm,
So it's really hard, but it's the bit that they seem to get into the most. And what I tend to see within BJJ is that when people get that bite, then they want to go full on.
yeah.
And that's what ends them crashing and burning out within 12 months of, training 5 times a week or whatever. And the ones that get through that, that's the thing about early specialization as well.
Mm,
There will be a minority that weather
yes.
that storm and go on to be really good. But you're burning out such a quantity of people in that process that, and a lot of the talent development stuff openly acknowledges now that they're no better in a better
Yeah,
position now to identify talent than they were, 20, 30 years ago. You know yourself, the people that you think the athletic people that come into class, the athletic kids, and you think, oh, they're so good, they're going to be so good when they're older. They drop out, and the kid that you might have paid no attention to,
yeah,
that goes through hardship and challenge and building grit, that's there for the long term. And then afterwards, you're like, wow, that kid started from nothing, and now they're awesome.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's really hard to pick that. So you can't pick it basically, and that's why you need to have this all-encompassing spend time with everybody. I
Yeah.
mean, when I first started BJJ as well, I trained with someone that was a bit egocentric, shall we say? I'm not going to give his name out.
That never happens in jiu-jitsu. What do
He's
you
not
mean?
around these days, I don't think. But it was at the time there weren't many black belts
Yeah.
around, and I travelled over to his venue to train with him, and there weren't many black belts around, and I still chose to train with the purple belt that was
Mm.
there because of his interpersonal skills.
Yeah.
And even now, I trained with Craig Tetley for quite a few years now, and one of the main reasons I continue to train with him is he's a really good teacher. His coaching skills, his personal skills, he's humble.
Mm.
And these are all things that I admire and make it a pleasure to be there. Even
Yeah.
though I progress at this, I just got my purple belt a couple of weeks ago,
I was going to
and I've
ask
been
you
doing
about
it
that.
about 15 years on and off. I'm the slowest guy in the world in terms of development, but I get there in the
No, no,
end.
I had a girl who'd been training 20 years and she was a white belt for
Wow.
20 years. And it was because she was
Wow.
like she worked on cruise ships and stuff like that and fell out
She
with a
was
few,
away quite a lot.
just as we were talking about, she was in some environments that were relatively toxic.
Yeah.
And like that kind of thing is, kind of detrimental to
And
to a lot of
probably in
people.
BJJ, inclusivity is probably
Yeah.
something that's not really been spoken about in the past.
No.
But in essence, that's what we're talking about,
Yes.
including everybody and looking to develop everyone. Because
Yeah.
even if you've got the idea that you want to produce a really elite level person, you just don't know who that person is going to be
Yeah.
when they first start out.
Yeah, I saw this video on Instagram recently. It was like an Australian guy who was like a talent, one of the talent development guys, and he was like, I think he said he was doing it for, I think it was the 2008 Olympics or something like that, and they spent like 12 years traveling around Australia trying to figure out who was going to be the kid that turned into that
Yeah,
elite
yeah.
level. And he was like, yeah, we had no idea. I
Yeah,
couldn't
we
tell you
did
now.
similar research in Taekwondo where we looked at who had medaled below cadet level, which is
Hmm.
back end of primary school age,
Right.
who'd medaled at the highest level at the World Championships and Europeans and stuff like that, that then went on to win an Olympic
Mm.
medal, and there were hardly any.
Yeah.
If
So in
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry,
hardly.
continue. Chris.
No, I'm just saying there were hardly any. I
Yeah.
think that had done it at both levels, because, like you said, they get burnt out most of the time.
Yeah. So in terms of let's talk about kids for a few seconds. In terms of like your children's program or what you'd suggest for a children's program, the goal then is really about retention more than kind of skill acquisition and skill development. Retention and kind of developing a broad base of
A
physical
broad base
skill.
to a certain degree, especially at the bottom end.
Yeah.
You've probably heard of the fundamental movement
Hmm.
skills and things like that, but you can tailor the movement skills towards your sport style,
Yes.
your activity, while having a good overall base, really.
Yeah. Could you give a quick example of that?
So, for instance, with the running, jumping, hopping, skipping,
Hmm.
the basic locomotion type
Yeah.
stuff, and then the balance type activities that you
Mm.
can tailor towards, remember the old drill to win stuff on the Swiss balls and stuff like
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You can do that on each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Having games where, okay, the requirement for this is that the person that's on top stays on top.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the person underneath does. Your opportunity is just to stay on top.
Yeah.
So creating games like that for the working up the balance as well. Um, it was originally we did, if you think about the ABCs that were originally there, it was agility, balance, coordination, and speed was the
Mm.
original ABCs type
Yeah.
set. It's a little bit more developed now, but
It's still
also
basically the
relevant.
same, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's also
Overarching
relevant.
concepts is the kind of the same.
Yeah. I
Have
mean, you do
you?
it in BJJ when you've got got the kids doing bear crawls and other stuff like that, tabletops and
Yeah.
stuff. It's all locomotion
Yeah, very much so. In terms
skills.
of like connecting that with more of like a traditional martial art, because are you still teaching Taekwondo?
Yeah, I teach 6 classes a week, 2 traditional jiu-jitsu, and then 4 taekwondo. 2 of them are just advanced classes, family advanced classes,
Yeah.
and 2 of them are sport taekwondo classes where we're developing people that want to compete.
Within your classroom, then, are you incorporating all of these things in it? So does it look like would it look like a traditional Taekwondo class, or would it look completely different?
No, none of the none of the stuff that we do looks like a traditional martial arts
Yeah.
class. just by the fact that one simple coaching behavior or concept that we try to implement is no laps, no lines, no lectures.
Mm,
And that fills in so many different areas and it's easy for coaches to understand.
yeah.
So no laps is sort of dedicated towards the PE teachers that used to say, we're going to do PE today, go do laps around the fields,
Yeah, yeah.
mindlessly throwing in exercises that are not building their
They're kind
movement
of pointless, right?
ability.
Yeah, like why are
Yeah,
we doing
yeah,
a
yeah,
hundred
yeah,
press
yeah.
ups?
So it's getting rid of stuff like that. And then no lines is to do with back in the day, we used to have a line of 10 kids. I used to be one of them. Well, I started when I was 16 in Taekwondo, a line of 10 people, each waiting for the turn to kick a pad.
Mm,
One of the biggest benefits that martial arts has is the physical activity
yeah.
part to it. That's where a lot of the benefits come from. And if you do a time and motion survey on your class, and they're sitting on the bums for um, 20 minutes, 25 minutes out of an hour, then they're not getting the benefit in that time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's trying to make sure. Besides that, as well, you lose them attention wise. They just disengage.
Yeah, we just well, Chelsea just read a study that was particularly in the UK. This was based in the UK that kids, even if they're doing PE classes like a couple of times a week, don't get enough activity because of
Yeah,
that. What you're talking about, they're sat down for too much of a class, or they're having that situation where it's like they come up and kick a ball towards the goal, right, and then it's back of
yeah,
the
yeah.
line again and not doing anything else, and it's like one of the things that we're trying to do now is highlight that to parents. Like, yeah, they might be doing PE at school, but are they actually physically doing enough
By the time they've
activity?
got changed, and then
Yeah,
they start to do it, and the teacher's explained everything and gone on far too long. And that's the no lectures part
yeah,
of the no laps, no lines, no lectures. It's the instructor sort of spending too much time on the delivery.
mm,
And you just use it as a rough guide. The younger the age group, the quicker you want to be in describing what you
yeah,
want. It needs to be just, bullet pointed. And you don't want to give them the what you want them to do in terms of the goal of the exercise or
yes,
um, give them a few bullet points, let them get on with it, and you can coach then. This is one of the things that I tend to find as well that definitely when I'm developing new instructors,
yeah,
and when you look at some of the traditional instructors as well, they spend too much time on instructing and not enough time on coaching. So they'll
mm,
stand up front and give the instructions,
mm,
and that's it. No
yeah,
learning happens from, I might as well be a DVD player
yeah,
or
yeah,
just
yeah.
an internet video on the wall. The magic happens with the coaching. And especially with the younger ones that we're trying to develop, we need to get them to go up and interact a lot more and build
Mm.
that connection with them.
Am I correct in like people don't really learn from hearing, right? From someone talking at them about what they're trying to do, right? It can be kind of useful in some ways,
It's just part
but
of the puzzle.
yeah, like going really deep into like, we're going to do this, this, and this, and your hand has to go there, and all of that kind of stuff is almost not
You don't
beneficial to the
know.
person.
There's certain technical aspects. It's a mixture of,
Yeah,
both the self-discovery and a little bit of instruction
yeah,
as well. But the in-between bit, which is really important and part of the coaching, is asking questions.
yes,
If you can be really good at asking questions, it's like being really good prompt engineer for AI.
mm, mm,
You're going in and asking the questions, and it's when they discover the answers themselves, they're more likely to learn. And learning takes place at that point.
yeah. So
As
in terms of asking questions, just to clarify that, you mean getting them to start a task and see their response, or are you
So
physically
you still
asking
set
them a
up the
question if,
task
yeah,
with a goal and a couple of
yeah,
bullet points if you want. But then when the task starts, rather than going round, this is what traditional coaches
mm,
tend to do most of the time. They go around and fix problems.
yes,
And it'll fix the problem there and then, but the child will get the problem again, or the adult further down the
mm,
line, and they'll wait for you to tell them what to do.
yeah,
Uh, and what you need is an element of self-discovery, which BJJ is great for this,
yeah,
where people get to, when you're doing the specifics, people get to um, test out different things and personalize
yeah,
the activity for them, really, and their strengths and weaknesses. Um, but yeah, they're going to remember it better and more learning is going to take place. My lecturer used to have a saying, which is the learning doesn't happen between my mouth and your ears.
yeah,
It happens between your ears.
yeah, yeah,
And that's always a good thing to remember that just telling somebody doesn't mean that they've learned it.
yeah. So
And you
in
can
terms,
always go on, sorry.
no, 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 continue. Sorry.
I was just going to say you can always one of the other good things as well when you're coaching is just to test for understanding.
Mm,
And again, it's asking questions.
yeah. So in terms of like if you were going to set a task, for example, for a group of kids or adults, I suppose it doesn't really make. I just view adults as kids basically the same
Yeah,
because
a
they
lot of the
kind of
stuff,
are,
the
right?
intrinsic motivational stuff still carries through for adults as it
Yeah, yeah.
does for kids. You know?
It's yeah, it's kind of the same. But if you were going to set a task, you would kind of be like, okay, like let's say we're going to do, I don't know, I want you to try and get over to mount from side control, for example. It's like this is what our game is. Your job as person on top, try and step over and get to mount. Person on bottom, you have to try and stop them doing that. Would that be like the limit of instruction that you would pretty much give them? And it's like, off you go,
It
crack on.
depends. It all comes down to what you're trying to achieve. If
Yeah,
you always have that in the back of your mind,
yeah,
um, because sometimes people get carried away with the sort of games-based approach,
mm,
they think it's the only thing. But for some traditional martial artists, the people that get on the mats have got other goals.
yeah,
When I get on the mat at 51, I'm thinking I want to be able to get on the mat, have a play, and get back off the mat in one
yeah,
piece so I
yeah,
can get back on the mat again. That's my goal. If the belts come, then the belts come. But I've been training long enough to know that that's a little bit irrelevant to me personally.
yeah,
So yeah, everybody's got different objectives, and you've just got to make sure that what you're setting up is not just necessarily replicating what somebody else has done, but you're thinking about what you want to achieve out of
mm,
that. It's like the whole stickers thing within children's martial art. If you just use them mindlessly, then what can
yeah,
happen is the kids might be doing the activity to get the stickers.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's not necessarily what you want. So
mm,
what you can do is maybe swap if you're going to use extrinsic rewards like stickers, then maybe use it as a rather than a if you do this, you get this, and if then reward, then you're using it as a now that reward. Now, if you
mm,
think of the traditional martial arts grading system, we've got a set syllabus. You do that syllabus. You on the day you execute that syllabus. Well done. You get the reward. That's an if then reward.
yeah,
Know what they need to do. But the good thing about BJJ is that most of it's a now that reward.
yeah,
Now that you've achieved this level, here's the belt. And then the belts don't necessarily have the same leverage over the person as the belts do in other martial arts. So that's
yeah.
one of the great things about
I
Brazilian
think,
Jiu-Jitsu.
yeah, I like, I came from more of a traditional background as well, like through kickboxing, FMA, and all of that kind of stuff, and JKD. And I never really understood why people got so held onto this idea of like doing gradings and doing testings. Like, I understand it to a certain extent. They use it from a business standpoint as a way for income generation. But from a coaching standpoint, it never really made sense to me. Like, it's much better for me, like the jiu-jitsu approach I find much better in
It
many
is.
ways
It,
for like the
but
development and all that kind of stuff. I think some coaches go too far where if they're like you can't ask about grades and what you need to achieve and like why haven't I got my blue belt and all that that doesn't make any sense to me. It's like you're not helping the person at this point. Like that's not what you're trying
no.
to do. You're gatekeeping. But if the person is at that point, give them the belt. Like have them working towards that. So when they're ready, they get to it rather than having to go through some test which adds all the pressure. Like why does that one singular day suddenly mean that you're now
Yeah,
ready
well,
for
again,
this?
it comes down to what you're trying to achieve with
Mm,
it. And we talked about self-determination theory,
yeah.
and that is autonomy. Um, next bit, competence.
Mm,
So somebody needs, and I change the meaning of this a little bit. Rather than the feeling of competence, I look at it from a goal setting
mm,
point of view, that what you're asking them to do, they need to feel that it's within their grasp.
mm.
If you're asking for more, then you need more scaffolding to
Yeah, yeah.
support them in that goal. And if you're asking for less, then you might be able to just let them get on with it.
Yeah, yeah.
So the belts really, ideally, you want to be using as a now that reward
Yeah.
and use it in a way that helps them feel that they've built a level of competence, but then they're obviously looking at the future for the next level of competence.
Mm,
And they're getting feedback all the time in BJJ. That's the great thing about
yeah.
it. You don't know that you're progressing until you're rolling with the new guys,
Yeah,
when
yeah, yeah.
blue belt level and stuff. They're coming in and they feel like, it's like me. I got my blue belt 2 weeks ago, my purple belt 2 weeks ago. A week after that, we got a couple of lads that used to be at Bradford. They've moved down to Braulio's and they're training
Mm.
down there 6 days a week, competing every weekend. A blue belt kicked my ass and subbed me twice in 5 minutes. A blue belt late teenager.
Oh, don't get me started on the teenagers. They're the bane of my existence in jiu-jitsu half the time.
Yeah, so your competence level is tested all the time,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
but having that variety and rolling with different people and stuff, it gives you a better feeling of, you can do in some arenas, but it's enough that you get your butt kicked now and again that keeps you humble and
Yeah, yeah, of course.
grounded.
Um, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about as well was the whole eco thing within jiu-jitsu because it has become such a hot kind of topic. And a lot of the guys kind of purporting to it are so dogmatic in their approach. Like
$100%.
one of the things that I hate, like I did a chemistry degree. I come from a science background, right? It is an evolving. Whatever you're doing from a scientific basis is evolving. You have to challenge your assumptions always, and you're trying to like iterate. And there is never like a definite solution as the best way of doing something, right? So when I see guys going on like, this is the way, this is the only way that we learn, I'm like, no, man, that's
Yeah.
you can use all the scientific terms, but if you're not still challenging your own assumptions and retesting and looking for the latest research and all that kind of stuff, you're not there. Like this is a big problem what I'm doing. The first thing I wanted to I've kind of touched on it a little bit as well, but is like essentially, from my understanding, there's two different ideas. You have like the ecological dynamics guys, and then you have the more, I think it's called Schema, or there's a more updated one, which is kind of like
Yeah,
your brain is like a computer and it accesses programs versus ecological dynamics, which is like you already have all this information and you're attuning to it in the thing.
if
Can
you
you
think of
expand
it,
on that a little bit?
if you think of it like this, a psychologist would, after interviewing somebody, suggest psychological
Mm,
intervention to fix that person. Um, Somebody in an S&C background would suggest some physical element to fix
yeah.
that. And it comes down to that. If you've only got a hammer, everything
Yes. Yeah.
looks
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
nail. Um, and the number of lecturers that you tend to find that only have a hammer, they try to be interdisciplinary, but
Mm,
often, they just
they
revert back
fail.
to what they know.
Yeah.
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 So it's all got relevance.
Yeah.
And again, it just depends, what you're trying to achieve in what environment. Because if you've got, say, if you run totally on a constraints-led basis and you're quite strict in the not giving them too much information, then you might find that there's too much uncertainty and
Mm,
there's too much challenge. And again, with intrinsic motivation, if there's too much challenge there and people just don't have a clue, there's so much uncertainty that your dropout will go up.
yeah.
So it's
This is very much something that I think kind of reflecting on and found in my own coaching development that coaching isn't just about skill development. It's not just about
no,
how good your students are getting. You have to be able to retain them. To do that, they not only need to get better, but they also need to feel like they're getting better. And
yes,
sometimes
100%.
that can mean be
Yeah,
like, we're going to show you how to do three sweeps from De La Riva because they can go,
yeah,
oh, I know these three sweeps from De La Riva, and it gives them that kind of almost like feedback, like regardless of whether they can actually use it in
yeah,
practice.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
I always think about like if I taught a new guy jiu-jitsu, right? I want them to come out from their first session being like, yeah, I want to be able to show my mates this cool technique that I did, regardless of
yeah,
whether they
yeah.
can apply it, right? Versus coming out and being like, I don't really know what we did. We kind of laid
It's
around on the
retaining them,
ground
isn't
a
it?
little bit. Yeah.
You know that for anybody to get better across the board,
Yeah.
we're doing it for years,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's no other option
Yeah.
to retain people. And ultimately, if you had a good technical class of BJJ practitioners and you dropped anybody in there and just had them do it for years
Yeah.
with almost without any instruction's going to help, coaching's going to help, but even without that, they'd get better over
Yeah,
time if
yeah.
they just took it out.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So that's why I've got this focus on retention, really.
Yeah.
Uh, what's the saying that I tend to use sometimes that um, your program's not doing anything for a person that found it too challenging, the environment too strict, or anything else, and is now sitting on the couch at home not doing it.
Yeah.
Your program's not doing anything for them.
Yeah. I
So
think
the longer you can keep people in it and then nudge them along, the better chance you have of developing them and their BJJ or whatever it is that you're teaching.
yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it is focus on that retention element and then provide pathways for the people who want a more challenging experience, want to go down that competitive route versus not. Like the people who are just there, like 51-year-old, I want to get on the mat, I want to have a good
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
you know, I want to hang out with my friends, learn a little bit, feel like I've learned a little bit, and then
I'm
come
still
back and do
getting,
it a
if you
couple of
think
days later.
about the benefits of martial arts and physical
Yeah,
activity, I'm still getting the majority of the
yeah,
benefits of that. Um, just because I'm not competing on a regular basis, it doesn't mean that all
No.
that stuff's eradicated or drops out.
Yeah, yeah.
It's there.
Yeah, and I don't think it devalues what you're doing either. Again, in jiu-jitsu, I find that so much emphasis is put on like competition because it is a competitive art and it's not the be all and end all of it. There's so much more that you get from jiu-jitsu or from like kind of any martial art really. To put
I
this
think
one thing on the pedestal and be like, we've got to train like this because we want to be as good as possible devalues it quite heavily.
there's something unique to martial arts as well, which doesn't really happen in a lot of the other sports. And that is that the I feel sorry for Craig and you guys, the instructors and coaches in BJJ, because not only are you expected to be great coaches and run a solid business, that means that you're still going to be in business in 10 years' time,
Yeah.
you're expected to perform at the highest
Yeah,
level
yeah,
on
I know, yeah.
mats. Now, if you're spending the time splitting and you've got a family and stuff and life outside of that as well, and you're splitting your time between them different areas, then there's no way you can be as good as, a really flexible youngster that's training 6 days a week, competing
Yeah.
every weekend.
It's
You
impossible.
know,
Yeah, it's funny.
it's a funny, it'd be like the equivalent of going to the Olympics and asking the 40 or 50-year-old coach to get up and demonstrate the routine
Yeah,
that the
no.
Olympians are doing.
Yeah, it's such a strange thing. Jiu-jitsu, I find it so funny in that way. It's like people suddenly like because you're like I'm finding it now with like my younger competitors and whatnot. I'm happy to say I'm very good at jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah.
And I can hang with most people most of the time. But the young guys coming through, I'm tired, man. Like,
Yeah.
like I had my daughter up at 3 a.m. this morning throwing up and like I'm running businesses. Like now I'm talking to like my
You got your
life isn't
sideline,
just
yeah.
training anymore. And then you want me to come in and then you're going to try and kill me. I'm like, oh man, this is
Yeah,
tough
Craig
life.
used to do a lot of privates. I think a lot of
Yeah,
the BJJ guys do a lot of privates. He
yeah,
was like, I can't take these, stacked athlete,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and coming in and just trying to smash me the whole
yeah, yeah. No,
time.
It's
At some
just a
point,
mess.
having energy to deliver classes after their privates, as well as everything else and living your life as well, it's like, wow, wow.
Mm. Yeah, it's madness. Um, yeah, going back to what we were talking about with the eco versus everything else, right? In terms of so, because really that's about learning, right? How do we learn? Like, what's the process going on in our brain rather than actually what we do on the mat? Is there much difference between like if I took one class which is more based on like, for example, schema theory versus one versus like something that's going to be more based on like ecological dynamics and constraints? Are they going to actually look at that different?
Um, I think I'm not one of these that has, well, no, I suppose my hammer is retention and
Mm.
motivation and engagement, really. That's my hammer. But I'm not an expert in constraints-led learning or
Yeah.
ecological dynamics or any of the game sense. There's so many of them out there.
Yeah.
I just like to have what we're looking at is one of the main reasons for having sort of using ecological dynamics and constraints-led learning is to you to have your practice be representative of
Mm.
what you want them to do and transferable to that.
Yeah.
So the idea behind constraints-led learning and stuff is to have it represent the activity,
Yeah.
and that's the whole gist of the games-based approach. Um, Now, for me, I we do a lot of that. So, for instance, if I'm teaching a taekwondo class, if I'm just stripping it back to we want to develop a technical turning kick, for instance, then in the sport taekwondo class, what we'd do is we would have them put all the gear on, sparring gear, and then at the very basic level, we'll say, okay, it's sparring only with turning kick. So
Mm.
they get loads of reps in, they're using different varieties, they've got the ability to put their own little spin on it and develop their own specialist techniques and stuff, but they're still constrained to that one
Yeah.
technique. So at the basic level, you can go like that. And then at the highest level, I mean, we use constraints. So we not only use constraints that I provide, we'll have it where we work through a list of constraints.
Hmm.
We'll also do it as a team-based activity that I like doing now and again, where your partner provides a constraint. So if you're
Okay.
really good at head kicks, what we'll say is no head kicks. And that
Mm.
forces you to work on other elements of the game. And at the same time, makes it more competitive for the other person if you're really strong in that area. So there's
Yeah.
lots of little things that you can do with that. And in terms of the constraints, I try not to do too much of the work. So there's some self-discovery on their part. But then what we'll do as well is we'll get them together and share ideas, what worked for
Mm,
you, so as much as possible, have it led by them. But it's
mm.
just about asking good questions if you can. But it sounds really easy, but it's a little bit harder. But that's your coaching element, and you add on top of that as well. You remember that diagram? You've got the who there,
Yeah.
student, and the student. Each student is totally different,
Yeah.
so everything's going to be different. The coaching elements are going to be different for that individual as well. Their stage of development, their we talk about three ages. So you've got development age, chronological age, development age, and then training age.
Mm.
How long you've been training as well, and all them three have impact on that person,
Yeah.
and your coaching of them as well. So yeah, there's just a lot of variables in
Yeah,
coach.
I agree. I completely agree. You know, that's the thing that we found in our classes and our coaching as well. Like, if you try to, we can work on a technique, but not everybody is going to require the same things that we need to do. And you need to be adaptive to the people within your class, what their goals are, motivations, who they're with, like all of that kind of stuff, which is important. I know from my own experience that one of the things that I see with a lot of the constraints guys is, or like the ecological guys, they just do games and they're so disparate. They're like doing,
Yeah,
we're going to do this thing from guard, we're going to do this thing from like, passing, and then we're going to do this thing from takedowns. And it's like, well, how are you ever fitting it all back together? Because all you're then
yeah,
doing is just doing like specific training rounds, which goes
yeah,
against the
yeah.
idea of ecological dynamics anyway, that you're essentially going, whole part whole and
Random.
bringing it back into where you need to go to. Like, why are we not doing that? It's very
Yeah.
an interesting thing. That might be just the age of kind of, I guess, the age of learning in terms of like how long people have been exposed to this.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the problem. Part of the problem in BJJ as well is, um, you know, you can do armbar from 50 different positions.
mm,
You can do Ezekiel from 50 different positions. So it's hard taking specific areas like that and doing it in in a sequence over
yeah,
whatever that if you're not careful, then by the time you get round to one bit, then they've totally forgotten that because
yeah,
it was years ago since you last did it.
yeah,
I think there could be more done about the thinking of um, the balance between focusing on one area and then having sporadic interjections of stuff that
mm,
you've done in the past, just little hits of revision, if you like. So it
mm,
triggers the memory draw that they need to do, and that helps solidify the long-term retention of that
mm,
information then,
mm,
and then skills at the same time. So I think it's called spacing and interleaving,
yeah,
where you're taking the different areas and then you want a bit where you're concentrating and looking in depth at one area a little bit more, but then you've got these little blips of recall going on to
yeah.
help, you know.
The do you have a kind of specific curriculum that you're teaching them within your classes, or are you using, is it more based on the students' needs within it?
So we have it's designed with the same idea of the delivering that we want to instruct the class and then
Mm,
coach the individual.
mm,
So it's based on the similar sort of thing where um, we will have a set syllabus, but then at the same time we'll go around and individualize.
okay.
Differentiate, what we
Yeah.
talked about before, where you will make it a little bit harder for them if they're challenge point, if they
Mm,
find it easy, or make it a little bit easier just by suggesting different versions of it.
mm.
So it might be the same technique, but a little harder one, or you might progress it through to a combination. You try this, then you go to this.
Yeah, does
Um,
that then eliminate the necessity for like splitting class levels? So like for example, beginners and advanced, because there's no, you can do essentially the same thing. Like I always think about, like we've started doing this within our own gym. We don't really have an advanced class or an intermediate class. We do have a specific beginners program where we kind of introduce them to what jiu-jitsu is. But then everybody else is together because for a beginner, everything's new to them. Like there is no, you
it's
know,
a bit of a balance with in the traditional martial arts because they've got set curriculums for
mm,
different grades a lot of the time.
yes,
Then you need to balance the needs of the individual with the ability to teach
mm,
a whole class. It's a lot harder with the children. Within our jiu-jitsu classes, our jiu-jitsu classes, what we tend to do is that because we've got this process that we use where if you are a green belt, you will help yellow belts
Mm,
because that helps the recall of the techniques and stuff like that. And
mm,
then I can, go and ask some questions if I need to, if they're not quite getting it right or whatever. But that process works really well with adults, but with the
mm,
children, it's a lot harder. So
mm.
tend to have beginner, intermediate, and advanced
Yes.
for
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
kids.
That's actually what we've done as well.
But in the sparring class, we don't.
Okay.
We once broke off the people preparing for competition and stuff. We once broke off the kids from the teens and adults, and what we missed then is um, we missed the role models in the
Yeah,
class.
institutional knowledge, right? That's what we
Yeah,
call
yeah,
it. Where you get the like people learn by being in the environment and having those people who have been
yes,
longer in that
yeah,
environment.
and
Yeah,
also
yeah.
as well, it trains the older teens and adults and stuff to be humble and train
Mm,
with the children as well.
mm,
Um, and that's obviously something that we want to promote within martial arts
yeah.
generally. So it works quite well. But yeah, another thing which we don't talk about much within martial arts is years ago, I lost a student that went off to open his own club,
Mm,
which was fine. We didn't really miss him as an instructor because he worked for us as an instructor,
yeah.
but we missed him as a captain.
Okay.
And you won't have a captain necessarily in your class, but you've got that one person or two people that sort of set the pace and nudge everybody to
Yes,
do
yeah, yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
better. And they're
Mm,
the ones that you tend to pull out for demos some of the time, and they're the ones that tend to nudge other people to
mm,
get on with it, and it keeps the pace of the class really well.
mm.
Yeah, yeah, that's a concept that I've been thinking about recently.
Yeah,
Having a
have you got a framework for developing those type of people, or is it just a
No, because I've only
personality
just
based
been
thing?
speaking. Yeah, it's personality based. It's usually the person that's been around for a long time, and then
Yeah,
not often they are very good as
yeah.
well, technically and tactically, but not always the
Mm.
best. Um, but yeah, they tend to nudge everybody else along, and it tends to make it a lot easier to teach.
Yes.
Because that's one of the other things that people tend to not get quite right. I think some of the time, if they want people engaged within the classes, the pace of
Mm.
your kids' classes, that's so important. So if you're doing, lines of 10 people to work to kick a pad, or you're rotating around and everybody's sitting around and watching the sparring supposedly,
Mm.
as you rotate them through three groups or something like that, if your rotations are not quick enough and there's too much sitting around, then it can slow the pace down a little bit of the
Yes.
class. And that's when the
Yeah,
kids start to find something to do that you don't necessarily want them to do.
yeah.
You lose engagement. So, yeah, and that's all to do with as well the when you're giving the instructions, keeping it short and snappy.
Yeah. Mm.
Uh, if you've got children to move around or using equipment or whatever, then it's having that ready so there's quick transitions,
Mm.
everything moving.
Mm.
Even to the point of using any assistants that you've got in class to get ready for the next bit. Either they finish off the last segment or
Yeah.
you start the new one or vice versa. But it's keeping that pace of the class. I tend to find that the children are a lot more engaged when you've got a good
Yeah, I totally agree. Like if you have too much downtime in a class, it can. It's actually sometimes we do use it as a tool because kids, you'll know for yourself, right? Depending on the time of the year or school year and whatnot, kids will do better or worse. So it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
like a reflection of like sometimes we'll have crazy classes. We had a class the other day where it was just mental. I don't know what was going on, what they'd drunk and eaten, but it was like we had to change class plan like four times
Yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah,
class because they
yeah.
was
That
all over the
happens. And
place.
I'd always say plan your classes, because the
Yeah,
majority of the time you're going to have better classes if you've had time to plan,
yeah.
reflect, think about how it went last time, have some other options there if this one doesn't quite work. But still, every now and again, you're like,
Yeah,
the
this
kids
is
get
just
on
how
me today,
what we're gonna do today is
put
start
your
guns.
kit on, let's start.
Yeah, yeah.
It's-
Literally, that becomes the option. It's like, okay, you guys are wired. We're gonna just do a lot
Yeah.
of activity and burn off some of that energy.
But
Yeah,
that's a good
absolutely.
it's a good reflection on the coach, his ability
Mm,
to say, I'm not going to stick with this plan and force it through.
yeah.
And so you've got reflection on action. So when you afterwards, if you can do a little reflection on the stuff that worked, the stuff that didn't, any changes that you made to your plan, stuff for future, just a couple of bullet points. You've got reflection on action, but then you've got reflection in action during the
Mm.
session where you're like, this ain't working today. They're not down with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think what you're
I think what
saying
you're
with like
saying with like
the
the
tracking of
track.
lesson plans and stuff like that is so crucial. Like, and so many instructors don't even do it. They don't even like write stuff like that down. But we have like little notes sections on our lesson plans. It's like what worked well, what didn't work well.
Yeah.
What do I want to, if I come back to this lesson plan, like what can I, what do I need to change about it or potentially look at changing about it? That sort of things. And then like, 2 years down the time, you've got like a bank of,
Yes,
100
100%.
plus lesson plans, and you can
And
just
it's
go,
not
oh yeah,
often that you'll 100% run the same
yeah,
session unless it was a really good one. A lot of time, though, you'll take it and go, oh, yeah, I want to do this session plan, but I'm going to tweak
yeah,
this and change this a little bit because I've had this other idea.
mm,
And it's very easy to put together good session plans.
yeah,
You've got a lot of people out there that are not necessarily running 100 different sessions. They're running the same session 100 times.
yeah,
And if there's no reflection from your point of view, then there's probably not that much learning going on
yeah,
for you, the coach, as well.
yeah,
Uh, but it does make it a lot easier when you've got this bank of
mm,
session plans. Even if I don't know if you've sold a bank of session plans in the past to
yes, yeah,
instructors.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's a really good place for people to start because not only does it give them something to start with, but it gives them something to reflect on as well.
yes, yeah,
And then they can run it and say, "Oh, well, that's not quite right for us. We'll change that. That's great. That's what it
yeah.
should be. Not that these are concrete and just do these exactly, but you adapt them as you need them and change them for your people. It
Yeah,
might be
that's
whatever.
exactly what we say with our curriculums when people buy them. It's like try it, do it our way,
Yeah, yeah,
and then every single lesson that you run, reflect on it and adjust according to what you want to do. This is like I guess like a framework.
yeah,
But really, you're there to put your own spin on it. This
yeah,
is
yeah.
what we found that works in our academy. It gets the end result that we're looking for. You can tweak and adjust as you want,
Yeah, but
but
we're
go
all
through it
still
first.
learning as well.
Yeah,
So when you look back on the plans that you did, 4 or 5 years ago, you
yeah.
probably won't do it the same as that.
No, no,
So
no.
everybody's
Yeah.
sort of learning at the same time. I mean, the idea behind Maple originally was, I don't know if you know this, but Maple stands for something.
I guessed it did, but I didn't know what.
Yeah, it stands for Martial Arts Physical Literacy Engine.
Okay.
So basically, it's almost like a movement protocol
Hmm.
and a way of operating where physical literacy, basically, you're looking at keeping people active for life.
Mm.
So it has an emphasis
Yes.
towards learning the movement skills that's going to support them.
Mm.
What you tend to find in the research is that the children that are quite athletic and move well, they tend to be staying in activity for longer.
Yeah.
And if there's another activity that somebody suggests, that they're not like tentative about it. They're like, yeah, I'll give it a go because they're confident movers
Yeah.
and they can adapt to stuff really well. Whereas if they've just done one thing, then trying to transfer to another sport or another activity is really hard.
Mm.
We want to build robust, young, athletic kids, really.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we take in our program. Like it'd be great if we had like world class compares, but I don't care about that particularly.
Yeah, yeah,
Like it is about helping these kids become great adults, and that comes down to what we talked about, like in teaching intrinsic motivation, helping them be resilient to what's going on around them, like developing their bodies in a way that doesn't matter what they go into, they can achieve it, developing their confidence in themselves, all of that kind of stuff is so much more important and so much more valuable um, to them.
It
And
is. It
it,
comes
like,
down to what you want to achieve, and a lot of
yeah,
the time, people get hung up on the ego from the club point of view
yeah,
that
yeah,
they want their club to be seen as a
yeah,
leading
yeah.
light,
This great thing,
blah
right?
blah.
Yeah,
But um, the only thing that really matters really is what the student gets out of it.
yeah, yeah,
And yes, it's got to be motivational for us as well. The development model that I showed you for coaching, then the self bit is really important
mm,
too. It's got to fit in for us as well. And it's important that we don't get drawn into setting things up that are not in line with us because we won't do it for long. It won't be
yeah,
sustained.
yeah,
But when it comes down to it, it's what the student gets out of it that matters. The it, it's a funny way of looking at it, but for instance, if there's always arguments about whether somebody should have got a belt, somebody shouldn't have got a belt. But do you know what? The martial art doesn't care who got
yeah,
that belt. The only person that cares about it and that has value caring about it is the actual student. Was it right for them or is it cheating them? You've got
yeah,
to, and this whole old school way of thinking about, it's relative, sorry, it's absolute standards for
yeah,
martial arts in terms of the belts and stuff like that. It's BS. The
yeah,
martial art doesn't care. The martial art doesn't care. Your ego might take a bit of a bump if somebody that wasn't competing had been with you for years all of a sudden starts competing. But you can take it on the chin. What matters is what the student gets out of it, really. And that's why I think that it's okay to pitch the belts at a relative level.
yeah,
Has that person put in the effort? Has they have transformation over time? And if that's the case, then they deserve it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
The else that whines about that, who cares?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, particularly in jiu-jitsu, I see this a lot. Like, well, the black belts aren't what they used to be and all that kind of stuff. It's like,
Yeah,
man, the
yeah, yeah,
sport's grown and evolved. Like,
yeah.
you've got guys like, if you started today, you're never going to be like, as good as you were if you started when you were 20. It's just
No.
not possible. But you can get like you can improve from where you started to get to the point that you have the technical knowledge, the base, all of those things that I would consider to be a black belt. It doesn't make sense to like gatekeep this thing
Yeah,
for
yeah.
no
As long as
reason.
as long as people don't misrepresent,
Yes.
in terms of you don't want to say that you produce, high level black belts that compete all over the world and stuff when that's not the case. You don't want to
Mm.
misrepresent, but at the same time as well, it's fine to award belts, I think personally, as a relative level. Otherwise, how can you be inclusive and do
Yeah.
what we've just talked about already? You
Yeah.
can't really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna not hold you much longer, Phil, but I wanted to ask you one final question.
Yep.
What do you consider like from a retention point of view, because I guess we've talked a lot about that as using coaching as or focusing on retention from a coaching
Mm.
perspective. What do you think the biggest mistakes are that coaches make?
Um, Probably coaching the martial art and not the child in terms of the
Mm,
children, but same with any participant really. Um, they they've got a a view of that technique in the head of
mm,
how it should look, and everybody needs to be able to climb that tree. The
yeah,
famous picture with the goldfish in the bowl and the tree that everybody's got
yeah,
to climb. Yeah, I think often they'll coach the martial art and not the person in front of them.
mm,
Um, yeah, and one of the other things as well is teach now you were taught without reflection.
mm,
It's okay to teach you might have been taught really well by somebody that was a really good coach, and that's great if you teach that way as well. But you should at least reflect on that,
mm.
and see whether it's right for the people that you've got in your club, really.
Yeah. I think going back to something you said as well, if it's right for you as well, because if it's not,
Yeah, of
if
course. Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
kind of
It
almost
won't be
false
sustainable.
representing, yeah, you just can't do it over a long
It's
period of
like
time.
you basically what you need to do these days, which is a little bit different to how it was in the past, is take a multi-stakeholder approach
Mm,
where everything that you're doing is in line with your values. You've got the children that are in line with the way that you think. More importantly, just as important is the parents of the children as
yes.
well. I feel that at our own club, we can do a lot better on educating the parents on our
Mm,
approach. And we do things to help them understand, with the mission, vision, values and stuff like that. But we don't do enough to make it relatable for them
yeah.
and having little reminders of stuff because things pop up now and again. And you're like, that ain't the reason that we do that. Billy's leaving because he's not got stripes on his belt to be able to do the grading
Yeah.
this weekend, and the mother thinks that she's seen all the other kids and he's as good as. And I feel that at that instance we've sort of failed really as a club.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I
That
think we can do a lot better on that side.
that's definitely something that we've been reflecting on recently because you always end like everybody who starts needs to have the same information, right? But that doesn't mean you can necessarily give it to everybody all the time. Otherwise, you'd be talking
No,
this, but you do need a way of bringing people into your world and helping them understand what you are trying to achieve.
yeah,
The
without
way
feeling
is
like
like,
we're
how do you go
drinking from
about
a
doing
fire
it?
hose as well.
Yes.
That's I'm looking at developing an onboarding process at the
Mm,
moment that is balanced and that gives people specific information at different points. So I'm not
mm,
just that's what tends to happen is the way that we've always done it. We've put all the information in a booklet
yeah.
and given them on the first class and asked the parents to read through while the kids are in the class. But more often than not, they want to watch the big screen TV and
Yeah.
watch the kids in action, see,
Yeah.
get a feel for it. And then after that point, they might come back and join up, but they probably won't read that stuff information
Yeah.
again. They'll just get lost. So
Yeah. It's like it's drip feeding it out to them in
yeah,
a
at
manageable
the right
way.
time.
And then yes, trying to get it at the right
Yeah,
time
yeah, yeah.
and in the right order as well. Like that is
Yes.
the
Yeah.
big headache. Like I use a lot of email for that kind of stuff. We have onboarding
Yeah. I
systems
think
we use
automations
now.
and stuff like that.
That can be useful, but man, getting them to read it and then it's like, well,
Yeah,
now I have
it's
to get,
hard.
can I incorporate social media and all that kind of, what can I do to try and get these parents educated on it? Because we had
Yeah.
the same situation that you're talking about. Like one of the kids left because he didn't get a stripe, and it's like, well,
Yeah, yeah,
and the weird thing is like then you have the parents who support that kind of behavior and it's like how can I educate the parents that
yeah,
he's not got a stripe because he wasn't ready for the strike because he hasn't been training as much as his friend who's been training longer, like and more consistently.
Yeah.
And like, us to just give him a strike because he's turning up to like that's not how it
Yeah,
works.
well,
How's that helping them develop?
the our easiest grading area for getting belts is the dragons are 3 to 4 and 5 to 6s,
Mm,
and we've got to a bit of a hybrid system now whereby they've got to hit a minimum number of classes,
mm,
and basically that opens up a window then where the instructor has got a list of, I think there's 8 or 10 areas that we're looking
mm,
to promote based on that we can
mm.
attach something to that promotion.
Yeah.
Why did little Johnny get his belt? Oh, well, it was because of this. They've got something to attach to it, but there's a minimum
Mm,
requirements to train the parents to
yeah.
make sure they're bringing the kids on a regular basis. Basically, that's why we've got
Interesting.
the minimum requirement of, because we know
Yeah.
if they train consistently, we'll retain them longer and they'll get better. So there's
Mm.
an element of training the parents, but
Do
this
you
we
do
still
you
get
make
the
that
issues with parents saying they've attended the 10 classes, they should have the bell. But no, no, that's not the
minimum
way it works. And we
requirements?
keep telling you that opens the window, and then we're looking. If little Billy's been a smeghead for
Yeah, yeah,
the whole session, then he's not getting it today.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
but
Yeah,
if we
right.
can have something to attach to it, then they'll be presented with it, and we'll mention that. And I haven't done it yet, but I'm looking at printing out like a little A5, not a certificate as such, but something explaining what we've attached the grade to.
I mean,
So,
that's actually going to be my
Billy's
question. Like,
doing those
are
as
you
well.
are you showing that to the parents in some way where they
They've
can
had a
see?
copy of it already,
Right.
but we're not bringing it up frequently. We keep bringing it up and putting out this document, but they don't
They don't read
always
it,
read
right?
it, and then you get new people in as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So this little certificate, I think, and having these constant reminders as well, because like you said, you can send it out on WhatsApp, you can send a text message, an email, you can have it on the website, the social media, and they'll still be like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I know. I had that situation with a seminar recently. I like literally a guy had been in my class. I'd honestly 3 times I could remember I'd told him this seminar was happening. It'd been up on our social medias. I'd sent out an entire email sequence about it. I'm pretty sure he had a text message about it as well. He's like, just didn't know it was happening. And I'm like, I know that you,
What more can you
yeah,
do,
what it's like, what can I do to get this out to you, yeah, very, very funny. I think that's just dealing with people though. If you
It
crack it,
is.
let me know because I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, it's well, a big part of it is how we can educate the parents along with the
Yes,
children.
yes.
That's the main point that I think we need to focus on in terms of making sure that the parents understand the procedure, so they're not surprised when something happens, and they're not surprised
Mm,
when something doesn't happen.
yeah,
Getting them on board
yeah,
with
that
that.
is kind of
And
that
explaining
triangle,
as
right?
well. For instance, we want the parents to understand that to develop grit, we don't just give them the grit, we provide
Yeah,
opportunities for them to build the grit. That means sometimes they'll achieve something and sometimes they won't.
yeah,
And this is where the learning happens. This is what you're paying for.
yes,
You're not paying for Billy to get a bell. We can go buy one off eBay for
yeah,
two.
yeah. This
You're
the
paying
deeper
for what
stuff.
that represents and the
Mm.
skills that come with that. But yeah, it's just hard work sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got my good just now. I feel like every ever instructor I ever talked to complains about parents. It's just the way of
Yeah, I
things.
know, I know. But when you do get them on board, then it can work
Yes.
super well. They're
Yeah.
act as advocates for you and stuff, but it's just getting them into that position. Some people like the kids, and we have to differentiate for the kids. We have to differentiate for the adults as well.
Mm.
Sometimes you get some parents that are just a bit ditzy, always running late, and then other ones are really engaged and they want to watch the kids every session and stuff. And
Yeah.
they're just, they're all different, just like the kids
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. True. Very true. Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Phil. I'm not going to take up any more time because we've been talking for like an hour already. Is
Yeah.
there, if anybody wants to learn more about you, I think you've got the Maple system up online somewhere as well, correct?
MapleMartialArts.com at the moment. I'm just developing a course at the moment. The course will be launched just in between Christmas and New Year in terms
Okay.
of I've just done I've replaced, or I'm in the process of replacing British Taekwondo's children's program.
Okay.
And I've worked with a couple of different groups and stuff before, but I'm just developing my own as well.
Okay.
And obviously, I'm a bit of a turtle, so it'll take a long time, tortoise, but I'll get there in the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
about
So
Christmas time it should be.
in the
But
meantime, check out Maple Martial Arts.
MapleMartialArts.com. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. All right, Phil, thank you so much for
I
this chat.
do.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I will talk to you again soon, okay?
See you later.
See
Bye.
you later. Bye bye.